So you've heard me talk about it before, that there's no doubt the effectiveness of Gary Yamamoto Custom Baits as not only a standalone product, but as a product that you can use in conjunction with other lures like spinner baits, chatter baits, buzz baits. And today was no exception. We had a great day on the water. And one of the things that I've noticed over the last couple of weeks, you know, we're kind of approaching the end of summer. The fish are still shallow, believe it or not. There's a lot of different things going on. You know, there's a lot of bait shallow, there's a lot of bluegill shallow, and that's keeping some of the bass shallow too. The other thing that's happening too is that they're starting to spread out a little bit and become a little bit more isolated. There's not big groups of fish like you'd normally see, you know, in June and July stacked up in deeper water. It's becoming much harder to try to figure out how to catch those fish. So a lot of times what I do when that happens is I'll shift focus from real deep stuff to real shallow stuff. And that was evident today. But the obstacle that we face in trying to do that is being able to figure out how to catch them quick and how to dissect cover. So the fact that Gary Yamamoto Custom Baits are great as just standalone products, flipping, pitching, casting, a Senko, a flapping hog, cowboy, a mermaid, all those different baits that they make that are great for catching fish off of isolated targets. I need to cover a little bit more water. So what I'm doing now is I'm using them in conjunction with a chatterbait, which you've seen me fish before, and I'm also fishing a buzz bait, and I'm mixing up trailers to try to figure out how to get the fish to react. And that's one of the things I tend to do. You know, it's still fairly warm water conditions, so I'm looking to bulk my bait up a little bit. So as opposed to what I would normally fish in the, say, spring and fall, which is a 3/8 chatterbait with a shad-shaped worm on the back. You may not think about that as a shad-shaped worm being a great trailer for a chatterbait. It's a drop shot bait. It is one of the best chatterbait trailers that I've ever fished when they want a smaller profile offering. Now what I'll do too, because it's summertime or the end of summer and the water's still a little bit more, you know, a little bit warmer, is I'll replace that with maybe a D-Shad. Little bit bulkier bait, little bit bigger bait, little bit bigger profile. Or maybe I might even go to the fork tail or the original Zako. I may even go to the new paddle tail Zako. I might experiment around and see how the fish want my bait a certain time of day, windy conditions, cloudy conditions, dirtier water, clearer water, that sort of thing. I usually let the conditions dictate to me how I want to throw my bait and what trailer I want to put on. And one of the things that I noticed today, as you'll see from some of the footage, is the fact that the fish were much more isolated. Big expanses of cover is real hard to dissect fish and where they're located. But what I'll do to try to save myself a little bit of time is I'm going to pick more isolated cover. So an individual bush, an individual tree, an individual grass clump, things like that. Something that's a little bit more isolated. It just helps me be able to figure out how to pattern and catch fish more quickly. Now we did catch some fish on a buzzbait, which was a whole lot of fun. It's something that I'm going to alternate between the chatterbait, spinnerbait, and a buzzbait. And what I've done too is I've bulked my buzzbait up a little bit here. Is I've taken the original skirt off and I've put a Yamamoto Zako. This is the original one with the little fork tail. And this is one I really like. You know, the water's fairly clear right now. It's not horribly dirty. We haven't had a lot of rain. So I want a bulkier bait, but I also want something that's got a little bit bigger profile, but is not overpowering too. And that little fork-tail original Zako is awesome. And the thing that I do, you notice how I've got it rigged up here, is that I've got it rigged up so that the flatter piece of plastic rides on the bottom. That just helps keep my bait up a little bit, helps me fish a little bit faster, streamlines the bait a little bit. And then I'm gonna put a trailer hook on the back just in case they short strike it. That is a killer combination. Is what we caught all our fish on today. And the other thing I'll do too is I'll experiment, just like I did with the chatterbait. Is I'm going to experiment sometimes that they want a little bit noisier bait, something that thumps a little bit more, and this paddle tail Zako, awesome for doing that. And then you might even need it even more bulky Yama Frog. So great standalone baits, but great baits that are in combination with other lures to make them a lot more effective. So really kind of a fun thing to experiment with, and that's the cool thing about Gary Yamamoto Custom Baits, is that there's no wrong way to fish them. There's no wrong way to use them in different applications. They work in combinations. They work great standalone. You can experiment, fun, and that's one of the things about them being a custom bait. You can customize things just like you want. One last thing that I'll do too is I'm usually always going to have some type of a follow-up bait, because you know when you're fishing a topwater bait, they do tend to miss your bait at sometimes, and you know you might get short striked on a spinner bait or a chatterbait, and I want to have something that I can throw back at them. Now, one thing I've noticed too is that there's been a bluegill spawn going on for the last couple of months, and that's one of the things that's keeping these fish in and around shallow cover, is that bluegill spawn. So one of the things I really like to do is take one of these Yamamoto D-Shads, and this is the perch color, which kind of mimics or looks like a bluegill. It's kind of got that same coloration. I've got it on a 3/0 offset worm hook, and a lot of times what I want to do when I'm using this as a follow-up bait is I don't want to just cast it out there and start working it really fast. I want to just pitch it out there and let it fall. So one thing I do, which helps me greatly in being able to get a lot more strikes, VMC bladed hybrid treble hook. I've got it on a little keeper right there, just like you would a trailer hook, and all I'm going to do is, before I bury the plastic back into my hook, I'm going to take this little trailer and I'm going to slip it over the back just like that, and then I'm going to bury my D-Shad in just like that and skin hook it so that it's weaveless, and then I run this trailer back up, and you can even poke one of the hooks in just like that, and now I get a little bit of flash. I've got the treble hooking back so that when they eat the bait like that and they start pulling away, they get hooked. You don't have to physically set the hook real hard or pay attention. I'm just watching my line, watch my line to jump, go ahead and set the hook just like you would a regular, you know, flipping piece of plastic. It's a really, really good way to trigger some additional strikes. That Yamamoto D-Shad's a killer bait right there. And it's got enough bulk to it in density that it falls really good too. So it'll almost kind of fall straight down. Really, really good thing that I like to use as a follow-up bait. So just a few cool things you can do this time of year. Cover some water, fish shallow. Don't think that all the fish are deep, because a lot of times it might surprise you how shallow you can actually catch them this time of year. Try some different baits on the back of your chatterbaits, spinner baits, buzz baits. Have a few standalone things. Gary Yamamoto Custom Baits is truly a custom bait company.